Welcome back to The Journey, a conversation series from Collegiate Sports Associates featuring leaders from across the intercollegiate athletics landscape and beyond. In this episode, CSA Vice President and Chief of Staff Marcy Lanoue sits down with Patti Phillips, Chief Executive Officer of Women Leaders in Sports, to learn more about Patti's journey to Kansas City. Patti has led Women Leaders in Sports for 14 years and has been a constant advocate and champion for women across all avenues of athletics. In this episode, Patti and Marcy talk about the power of mentors, being a voice in the room, leading no matter what your title is, and of course, that ever elusive quest for balance. We hope you enjoy. Marcy, take it away.
Good morning, Patti. I'm super excited to be with you here, and I am really thrilled that the industry will get a chance to hear our conversation today too as well. But I have my flag. I'm waving it proudly.
Good work, as do I always. Great.
So thanks for being here with us today and joining Collegiate Sports Associates and our firm to have this conversation. So I have to ask you, were you up late last night watching your Chiefs, your beloved Chiefs?
I know. Well, don't put it out there. I certainly watched the Chiefs. I fell asleep before the end of the game, but the first thing I did when I got up was watch the replay on Sports Center. So yeah, it's Kansas City's on fire right now. Our Royals are doing pretty well. The Chiefs obviously won a great run. We have the KC Current, the women's national soccer team. They're doing really well. So it's a fun city to be in. You need to come visit more often.
I know, I do. And I'm excited to come see you in Baltimore, which we'll talk a little bit about that later on too as well. But I really, I'm so excited for this conversation, and I really hope our industry is equally as excited as I know they will be. But, you really are such a great beloved professional in our industry, and there's so many professionals, and not just women, that look up to you, that have been championed by you over the years, and you lead such a fabulous organization that does so much to uplift and really celebrate so many. And so really the inspiration behind this was, how can we flip that and celebrate and champion you and share some insight into your journey and some of the things you've learned along the way too as well. So really highlighting how special you are, and I'm excited for this opportunity. So what's really cool is, as I think about you and your visibility, I wonder, do people really know how decorated you are prior to Women Leaders in Sports? I think a lot of people understand the impact you've made with Women Leaders in Sports, but you are actually also a 2-time Hall of Famer in your own right. You've spent time at the NCAA. You've also been a former coach, volleyball and women's basketball. So that's really cool.
Yep.
And you've just done a lot of leadership programming throughout the years, before Women Leaders in Sports too as well. So you have really such a great background and a variety of different avenues you've really taken in sport, and certainly focusing on celebrating women throughout that time too as well. So, with that being said, I'll really throw the first question at you too. And, I mentioned this earlier, but you are such a great champion of others. But what's one part of your story that, again, really going into maybe, something that some, people or the industry, they don't know about you?
Where to start? Well, first of all, thank you, Marcy. As you know, I'm a huge fan of yours. I hope you feel like I'm a champion of yours. I always have been. And so it's an honor to be here with you and your team. And so I really appreciate you thinking of me in this way. I've had many champions, and I think that's the thing. Like, we don't ever get there alone, ever. And I think we call it different names depending on the circumstances. So I have great mentors. I have great friend tours. And honestly, I started my career with a champion, a male champion that hired me at 22, to do something that at the time I probably wasn't qualified to do, to coach basketball and volleyball, which I'd never played at a university level. So there's a lot of learnings there, So yeah, I mean, if the question was, have I had champions in my life? Yes. And I think I've had them my entire life and career. And so that's part of my passion in that area. I think I learned early on that we don't get there alone. And so, part of the conversation then becomes, how do you get people to champion you? And then that's what we've tried to learn and get better at teaching here with this organization. And honestly, just speaking clearly about the importance of it. And, encouraging people to step up. I think we all can be champion for others. I don't think it has to be at a certain level. I think especially women, we talk about we need other champions. Every woman could champion another woman and in certain ways. And so hopefully we could talk more about that. But, the quick answer to your question is, have I been champion? Absolutely. And that's changed my life and the trajectory of my career. And that's why I'm really, really passionate about it. And the first one, his name was Steve Hill, and he was the athletic director at Ottawa University. And he hired me at 22 to coach volleyball and basketball at a small college, right as I was graduating from college. So I was literally coaching people that were older than me. So there's a lot to talk about there, but I'll stop there for a moment.
Thank you, Steve. Shout out to Steve.
Yeah, Steve Hill. Yep.
So that's cool. Yeah, it's so interesting because now that I'm on the executive search side after 15 years of being a college athletic administrator, and I too have been surrounded by great champions. But, seeing it from this lens now, I always try to encourage candidates to really, hey, your champions have to be someone who you've worked with, who are going to sing your praises. It doesn't necessarily have to be the biggest name in the industry who's your champion, but so those authentic relationships certainly are helpful.
Yeah.
So going back to Ottawa, that was your first professional job, right? And what, was transformative, or what was something that stands out that was part of your learning experience there that you still either carry with you today or you're reminded of quite often?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think one of my early learnings was you're always interviewing for the next job. Mm-hmm. And again, I was in high school playing basketball, and Steve was the men's coach. And I used to go in and watch their practices, and he would see me coming in early and staying late. So he saw me from high school. And then I do think I kept in touch with him a little bit through college. But his assistant coach was someone that I knew. So these are relationships. So that was my first learning, because I would have never applied for that job or thought about it. So he thought about me. So that was my first learning. You're always interviewing for the next job. And you and I have talked about this quite a bit. It's by the work you do and how you show up every day. I think the other thing I learned early on when they said, it's basketball. And again, when the younger you are, I remember thinking, oh yeah, I could coach basketball. I wanted to be a high school basketball teacher or English teacher and coach, had no experience coaching. And yet I remember at the time thinking I could do it. And I did do it, but it's just kind of funny to think at 22 years old that you're qualified to do that. So part of that confidence we need, but the other part was I was a worker. And so when they said, well, volleyball too, and I had never played volleyball, I remember talking through, okay, how can I learn this? And I said, well, I would need to go to these coaching clinics and camps. So that was the other early learning. So one, you're always interviewing for the next job. Two, everything is learnable. I actually went to like a 2-week, or maybe I went a week at a time twice to this really great kind of coaching clinic. There's clinics for players, and this was a volleyball coaching clinic, and it was amazing. I actually turned the volleyball program around before the basketball program. Mm-hmm. So everything is learnable, and you just have to be willing to put in the work. So, those are probably the two lessons I learned early on from kind of my first professional experience. And you make mistakes and you learn and grow, but having those people around you that see potential in you is really, really important. And they see that by how you show up every single day. And that's why your point about these champions that women have, it's got to be people you've worked with that know you. They can speak to your true, how you show up every single day. So those would probably be, two really impactful learnings that literally have kept my entire career.
Mm-hmm. I love to hear that too. And the example of you not having experience in volleyball and just having this fearless approach of, okay, I'm going to be resourceful. I'm going to figure it out. And it reminds me so much of, and women in particular, we've talked about this, if they feel like their qualifications aren't met on a job advertisement, or, they feel like they're not maybe quite ready. So they hesitate to either apply or seek out, these jobs. And where you have on the other side where, men are very much more so will put their name out there and go for it. And so it's just such a great reminder that you can do it. Every job is a learning curve and a learning opportunity. But if you have the great work ethic, the passion, and are great with people, you can succeed and do a great job. So thanks. That was a good example of that. I love that.
Yeah. And you've heard me say this, Marcy. You don't ever know how to do the job you're going to get until you get in, because you haven't done it yet. And I do think this is a thing, guys don't know either, but I think they have traditionally had people around them saying, you can figure it out. You can do it. I'll help you. I'll call my buddy. Mm-hmm. And that's part of what we've built here. We've worked hard to build is this network where you have people around you can call, male and female, or you that can kind of speak potential into you. The other great champion I had professionally, who is still a great champion of mine, but she was the first one that spoke in something bigger in me that I thought was there, was Ann St. Peter. And she's the founder of Global Prairie at the time. She was with Fleshman Hiller in Kansas City on their global team. And she was I got her involved with Win for KC, which is under the Sports Commission umbrella. And she was a board member of mine. And I remember she was the first, I won't say the first person, but she specifically said to me, you could be a CEO. You should be a CEO. You could do something else. And I loved my job where I was at. And it's not that I didn't think I could be a CEO. I just never thought about it. It's kind of like women that, go into student athlete development or something because that's what they saw. They mm-hmm. never saw a female athletic director. They never saw a woman, in fundraising, or they hadn't seen those other jobs. That's why this representation matters. And you don't know what you don't know. You don't know what's out there. And that was so impactful for me. And at the time I was like, oh my God, no, I love my job. But it was 3 years later. It just got me in motion. These things get in your head, and she would always say, you should make more money. She was just speaking a bigger vision into me. Mm-hmm. And I'm a huge believer that we have to speak potential into one another, especially as women. I do think when people talk about the boys club, that's what they do. Johnny, you can do that. You can do that job, because they just whether you can or can't, they're like, who cares? Just go do the job. And women, we were like, oh my God, we got to know what we're doing. We got to check all the boxes. I don't want to fail. We need to be speaking this stuff into each other. Just go do it. Just go do the job. That will lead you to another job. You'll learn something from the job, whatever it is. And so that was a massive pivotal moment in my career. Just having someone, and she was and is a big deal in Kansas City. And I thought, oh my God, she sees something in me. I'll never forget it. It's still one of the most impactful moments for me. And that, again, changed the trajectory of my life and career. And she's still a very, very good friend, very involved in the organization, does all of our branding. Mm-hmm. So it's been wonderful to have her in my life. And I always tell people too, being around big thinkers, like who you surround yourself with matters. Mm-hmm. And so she's been a huge influence and quote champion.
Was that about the time where you really, and you've probably been passionate about this your entire life, but when was the moment that you were like, I want to be a part of organizations and really make a difference in leadership opportunities and inspire, professionals in this industry to really be confident, make their impact? when did that moment really crystallize for you, and you felt like this is my calling,
Yeah. I think these seeds are planted all throughout your career. First of all, my life dream was to be a coach. So I wanted to coach. At the time, I thought it was basketball. Then I wanted to be a life coach. And I still think I'm coaching. So that seed was there, that I think I had great coaches that I loved, and I would see myself improving. So there's something about that coach thing that was there. But yes, the Anne speaking that into me, that was at the next level of understanding what could be done here at scale, and not just one at a time. And that's what we work really hard to do. I don't think that we've nailed it. I think we're still working on it. And this is what this is the whole thing with women. And we can't just be speaking it to each other. We need men speaking it in, and they are our champions. And so I think, Marcy, I don't know. I'm one of those believers, there are these kind of moments, but also it is this evolution of growth in our life, with these different steps in our careers and these aha moments that come in. Sometimes you can't take it in the moment, and then it kind of like evolves as you evolve and as you do more and become more. But, so I'd say, first of all, I always want to be a coach. So that's part of it, kind of helping people get there. And then, the Anne moment was transformational for me because I just had never thought of it ever. Wow. And I do think, I like to talk about zone of genius. I do think I feel so fortunate and lucky that I do think I'm in a job that fits me, my purpose, my passion. I'm a huge believer in it. So I get to live what I really believe. And so I really feel fortunate in that way. And Anne really helped me get there for sure.
Yeah. My mom always comments that she loves that I love what I do. And I think so many people, right, don't always necessarily have the blessing of getting into a role that's, they wake up every day and feel inspired. And so that's amazing. So you care for so many people and you lift so many voices up. How do you take care of your own voice and ensure your story's heard, or that you're also advocating for yourself?
Gosh, that's such an interesting question. And, in general, I think my answer might surprise people, knowing, that we are an organization that champions women. And I believe, that women's voices need to be heard and that women need to be in the room, which is the theme for our convention this year. That being said, I actually don't focus on my voice. So I think there's a fine line there. I focus on the voice of this organization. This organization needs to have a powerful voice, not really Patti's voice. And so, and I do think there's a nuance there for women to think through. So, like we tell young women, out there in the universe, they hear, you need to raise your hand and have your voice heard. And I actually don't agree with that. I think actually when you get in the room, first of all, you want to get in the room, but you earn your way in the room through your work, not through your voice. Mm-hmm. When you're in the room, I think you need to use your voice to add value, not just to have a voice. Mm-hmm. So again, that's a nuanced answer, and hopefully people won't cut part of that. The whole answer is yes. When you work to have impact for a purpose, you are forwarding that purpose. This purpose is bigger than Patti. It's not about my voice. I want to make sure women leaders in sports has a brand voice and an influence that can make a difference. I don't think I necessarily need to be in the room with all these people and have Patti's voice heard. But if there's something that needs to be said that I have a take on, I will say it. But I'm not just going to say something just so that my voice is heard. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So there might be something interesting to talk about here because I don't want this to be misconstrued. Wow. But I do think, I don't know that my story needs to be heard all the time. I love that when I can tell it, but I'm not going to be out there trying to tell my story. I don't think that's what it's about, personally.
Yeah. I think about the time I've been in the room when I formerly was at University of San Diego, and we were at West Coast conference meetings. And so you're in there with 10 other institutions. Right. and you have the AD, you have the faculty athletic rep, and you have the SWA. And it's so interesting because in those meetings, you're advocating typically for your institution, but you're also looking to, as a whole, collective unit or league, advance the league too. And I always find it so interesting, the dialogue and the voices that end up being heard in that setting. And there's many other examples like that, but I like what you're saying is adding value versus, just speaking to speak or
right. Here's another nuance. Actually, I'm glad you said that. So the nuance to that is, and I should have thought of this at the beginning, how do you get your voice heard is really, it's very nuanced, and you have to make sure that you're communicating that to the people that have the voices at the time, to be quite honest. So there's meetings before the meetings, there's meetings after the meetings. And so actually, if your voice has never been heard, it's not going to be heard if you're just like speaking up. Mm-hmm. So you know what's on the agenda, and you make sure if you have a take on that you talk to your quote champion or the person that has the big voice, so that you can be brought into the conversation in the right way. Or if that's not possible, when you're in the room, again, if it's a different take, you're adding value at the right time. So it's still nuanced. It is. There's a high EQ factor that's really, really important there. And so, yes, I want women's voices to be heard, but we can't just tell women, raise your hand so your voice is heard. Like there's a whole nuanced process to that. And if they do that and it's not making sense, or you're speaking up at the wrong time. And by the way, many times this could be a non-gender thing. I mean, if there's young people in the room that are even men, or if there's guys, it's just like, you know what? The leaders are going to listen to people that are saying something that adds value at the right time. So is that before the meeting? Is it during the meeting? Is it after the meeting? So, it's a very nuanced answer. I hope you understand what I'm saying. I'm not saying that women's voices shouldn't be heard, but it's nuanced. I mean, you have to really think through that. And I don't think we have the luxury of just going in and trying to throw stuff out there. I mean, then, it might be heard, but actually you're going to be the one to really forward that through. So it's really about developing influence. How do you do that? Mm-hmm. And it's nuanced.
Yeah. This is a little off script, but just this conversation is making me think about many times as I've prepared for meetings or to have a voice, I think about persuasive speech and persuasive language, or when you're preparing to go into a negotiation, like what language you're using too. And it goes back to that value piece too, I think, in the preparation. But, I walked away certainly from meetings where I'm like, gosh, I could have been more persuasive.
Yes.
So a lot of it is preparation, I think.
Preparation. It is key.
Yeah.
Preparation in what you want to say, preparation with how you're going to go about it. I mean, and so that word preparation is huge.
Yeah. So really looking back on your journey, and we really touched on this too, but what are some keywords or quotes or phrases that your champions have shared with you that you hold dear to you, or that, you have on your wall, or what, whether it's a quote, something inspirational, or a saying that you really live by? And maybe even a segue into that is the theme for the conference in October, being in the room. What was maybe even the inspiration behind that thought as well?
Yeah. Well, so, I think this is where we're evolving too, is that the importance of, we're a leadership organization. We prepare and position women to work and lead in sports at every level. And we believe at every level, at any level, you can have impact. And ultimately, everyone doesn't want to lead or run an organization or be the athletic director or commissioner or, be a team owner or president. But what we want is women's voices in the room where the decisions are happening. that's what the whole in the room thing is. So that's about having influence. So, an influence doesn't always have to come with the title or with being the ultimate leader. There's a lot of influence that happens in organizations, but you got to be in the room. Mm-hmm. So I think when women are in the room, you get to make the choice. Do you want to elevate? Do you want to lead? But you also have influence on what is happening in the organization. That's the decisions that are being made. What is the culture like? And that's really where we need women. We need women to be in the room where the decisions are being made. So I think that's a different take on this whole notion of elevating into leadership. And, whatever level you're at, you want to have influence. So kind of getting in the room. And so, yeah, we're super excited about, the different ways we're going to weave that into the programming in Baltimore. And listen, I'm a quote person. I don't know if on the spot I could pick out my most favorite one. Seriously, yeah. I mean, every day I read stuff and, so I am into that, leveraging inspiration. And the problem is, and when people ask me the same thing with what my favorite book is, I mean, I read all the time. So I don't have a ultimate favorite. And I think it evolves over time. So I don't know if I can pick out just one as far as like a quote, but you also asked me, what were in, what other kind of words of wisdom. And I do think, and I can't remember how this was said, early on in my career, but the importance of, your people, your network, the impact that people around you have. Mm-hmm. So I talk about, and this was the Harvard Business Review that did this years ago. They can determine your wealth, health, and career trajectory by the 5 people you spend the most time with. I'm a huge believer in that. And so who you surround yourself with matters. People that are actually seeing the potential in you. Mm-hmm. People that are, and by the way, the universal feeling that we all have at times is self-doubt. It's universal. It is not a gendered thing. Men have it in certain moments. And so, but the thing is, they're around each other. They're like, you got this, you can do it. And so I think traditionally women hadn't done that years ago because there wasn't that many women that had been in the space. Now I think we do it. So this notion of, yeah, you could do it. You can go get that job, go for it. When you get the job, you could do it. This notion that we all need people, we need people around us. So who you surround yourself with matters, that network, that support system. So, I think that was the other kind of early lesson. And so, and maybe the quote is that I kind of made up, we don't live and work on an island. We're in a people world. Like we work with people, we live with people, we get things done with people. Nothing is done in isolation or in a silo. So who you surround yourself with and those important relationships really matter.
Yeah. I love that too, because, I often think as people approach their career trajectory, they often can get caught up in the institutional brand
right.
But it's so important who you're working with and who you're working for. I just believe in that. And
100%.
It's just part of the experience and part of your journey. But I always, and certainly now on the executive search side, that's part of my pitch, when I'm speaking to prospective candidates is being the leader, who they're working for and the culture. It's not always about the institution brand itself. It's really about the organization and the people within.
Yeah.
That's good. Going back to books, if you were to have your own book, what would the title be and what would the first chapter include?
Oh my gosh. I thought you were going to say going back to books. What is your favorite book? Or, one of my favorites of the last couple of years is Impact Players by Liz Wiseman. We are using that and teaching it a lot. It's a really, really good one. But, so when I was done coaching, I can't remember if it was actually when I was leaving the NCAA because it was moving to Indianapolis and I didn't want to move. And it was before I kind of landed at the Kansas City Sports Commission. I wanted to be like a life coach. Mm-hmm. And, again, coaching was a thing for me. And so I got these business cards made. And it was going to be, my business was going to be called Empowerment Enterprises. So that could be one title, but that was 30 years ago. I think now, what I'm a huge believer, it would be something around possibilitarian or pursue it. I don't know, anything's possible. I'm a big believer in that word. I just think, so however I would frame that, I don't know, I need to have a good marketing person, pursue possibility, something like that. Mm-hmm. I think that is the zone I live in. I mean, it's a growth mindset, but I love the word possibilitarian and anything's possible, really, truly. Everything is possible. So, in fact, one of my favorite quotes is, it always seems impossible. Everything seems impossible at the beginning until it's done. Then it is possible. Right. And that's the truth. So my title would be something like that, pursue possible, or, something about possibilitarian, if it's a real word, I'm not sure. And then what was the second part? What would the first chapter be? I think it would be something about getting into that mindset. I'm also a big believer, about growth mindset. I think managing your mindset is a key to life. I've always believed that. Always. These stories we tell ourselves, everything is a story. Like we always say at work, what stories are you creating about this interaction or about that email, about that text? It's a freaking story. What is the truth? So managing your mindset is critical, and that's then believing anything is possible. And when you do, you get in motion to make that possible. We all came from sports. We worked in sports. We played sports. That's called goal setting. And so this mindset that we had as athletes, I don't know why we lose that. Mm-hmm. You set a goal. And I talk about this. I did a TED talk, but I can't even remember the name of it. Oh, it's called Zone of Possibility. So that might be the book title, Zone of Possibility. And I talk about doing my first triathlon, and it literally changed my life. Now, I also was sick at the time, but this whole notion of saying I couldn't do it, but my college roommate she was in Colorado and did these triathlons, and I was like, she loved them, and I was like, I can't do that. I don't love to swim. I don't have a bike, and I hate to run. I can barely swim. She's like, oh yeah, you break it up and you work on the pieces, and you just do one piece at a time. And I was like, what? And I did my first triathlon. We did it. I set a goal. It was one of my New Year's resolutions. Got a couple of friends involved. We'd have trainings that we followed up with like beer and barbecue. So I don't know how that worked, but you learned all the things, like how all those goo things that triathletes use. And you just learned the tricks of it, and you learned how to train for it. Mm-hmm. Learn what a brick is, going from the bike to the run, because your legs feel like bricks. You just learn how to do it. And then when I did the first one, I literally thought I could go do anything in the world, because I thought it was impossible for me to do a triathlon before that.
Yeah.
So this notion of setting a goal and then getting in motion to do it, that's the mindset thing. It's the language thing. How are we speaking to ourselves? And then it becoming possible. So all that. So maybe that's more than one chapter. That sounds like it's the first 3 to 6 chapters. Maybe it's the entire book, something like that.
I see this in your future of being an author, and I'm sure the industry would agree. So we're going to champion you to think about that more down the road when you have time.
Awesome. Yeah, when I have time.
So speaking of that, some people listen to podcasts in the morning, but, you have a lot of energy that is infectious, and you have a lot of stamina. And I think the industry is also looking for inspiration in terms of that too. There's a lot of people in organizations that are wearing a lot of different hats and looking for stamina and looking for, ways to continue to be motivated. But do you set aside time when you talk about mindset? Are you really intentional about that? Do you set aside time daily? Is it in the morning? Maybe some rituals that you have.
Absolutely. I'm a huge believer in this. I'm a big believer in being, quote, fit to lead, which, spiritually, emotionally, mentally, physically fit you as leaders. I think it's our responsibility. And honestly, throughout your entire career, I do think this is something that could set you apart. And it's a commitment. Like I want to show up as my best self every day. So yes, my entire life, there's a lot of routines, and it starts the night before with my sleep habits. So actually, no, I don't stay up for the end of football games. And I don't stay up till 11 o'clock. it's a choice I make. I don't go out to things like that during the week. I want to be ready for this, so you just you have to make choices. Life is all about choices. So it always starts the night before for me. I consume everything there is about how I can, it's like this corporate athlete mentality. What do I need to do to show up as my best self? I'm a big believer in morning routines, and I tweak mine all the time. But I get up early so I can do stretching and breath work, and whether it's called mindset or meditation or whatever it is, I set a time for that. I move my body every single morning. I have, different types of workouts. So my weight training workouts are after work, Monday, Wednesdays, and I do them Saturday mornings. On other days, I'll do something in the morning to move my body for sure, whether it's a online bike or, a bike thing, or, I have a little elliptical or just different things I do, walk, run, whatever. But I do think that's super important. So setting, and the other thing is, people always say generate energy, and my team will tell you, or that I have energy. I generate energy. Like I generate it through my habits. And I think we all have choices. And I think it's interesting. I didn't just come out of the womb like this. I mean, I love life. I love my job. So I think there's a mindset and a happiness about that, but I generate the energy that goes with that. And I think that we can all choose to do that. And what we say here, it's kind of an expectation here that you show up as your best self. Like we have too much going on. It's not about us. It's about our members, and we got to be ready to roll. I mean, we have to be in a place where we can serve. And so you can't be tired and, not feeling well. There's some of that you can actually control. We can actually control how we feel, whether we're sick. What are you eating? What are you drinking? What do you sleep? How much are we sleeping? And I think we give away our power a lot of times. And I've been through a lot of trainings. I went to the Corporate Athlete Institute, by the way, twice. I went twice as an attendee and once to be a facilitator. So I do teach some of this, and I'm just a big believer. So yes, whatever the routine is, find a routine that works for you. But what we eat makes a difference in how we feel. What we consume in our minds makes a difference in how we feel and how we show up. Who we surround ourselves with makes a difference in how we speak. What we read, what are we choosing to consume comes back out. So I'm a big believer in all that. And I'm not perfect. I have days that I drag, quote, but I try to pivot. I literally sometimes I can't, if you don't sleep, I'm going through menopause, all those things. So there are things that happen, but I try to overcome it. But not every day is not great. And you can ask my team that, but I work really hard to be the best I can be every day. I work at it really hard. Mm-hmm. So that's a choice that I make.
Mm-hmm. I'm so happy that we can talk about that, because I think there was one time where, people really didn't talk about what they were doing personally to really fuel themselves and, in your mind, body, and spirit. So I'm happy that we can really have that dialogue too. We're shifting to women leaders in sports, and I'm really curious about this too. Of when you decided to expand the organization to serve not just women in college athletics, but women in sports, and other avenues too as well. What was, really the impetus behind that, and how are you seeing the impact of serving a larger community, and what are some of your favorite things you've maybe seen as part of that process?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think there's always been women that were involved or wanted to be involved, that were in different spaces. And actually in my tenure here, that started with our partners. So for instance, if CSA is a sponsor of ours or a partner, actually, when you have women like Marcy that works there, we want Marcy to be involved as a member, not just as a partner. So that was kind of the first iteration. then we were watching the trends that was happening, and we had women in college sports that were pivoting into other spaces, whether it's pro or sport adjacent industries or other sectors of sport that wanted to stay involved. And some did, and others found it a barrier because their organization they felt like the name was a barrier. Because ultimately we realized we weren't really about college sports. We aren't the organization that's about college sports. We're the organization that's about women. At the time, it started with women working in college sports. But a lot of those women weren't working in college sports anymore. They had pivoted. We have so many examples. I don't need to go through the names, but that, Jennifer Williams, who's now at USA Basketball, and Andrea Williams, who's with the Utah Jazz, and China Jude. I mean, these are women that were in the collegiate space that we all know.
Yeah.
And so, it was an obvious evolution. And then the other thing was we had actually women from other sectors of sport reaching out to us saying, hey, we want leadership. We want this kind of leadership programming. And actually, it really started with the NFL. We were working with the NFL for 7 years with their kind of women in football. And those women that went to their program that we helped them with were women on college campuses of football. So it was kind of this natural evolution. And, Molly Marcoux, who was at Princeton, then went to the LPGA as the commissioner. There's another one. She brought us in. She knew what we were doing to do programming for the LPGA, not just for their women. So we've done leadership work there. So it's just kind of this national or natural evolution. And we also were watching the landscape of the NCAA, the hiring. As you know, we've tracked the hiring trends for years. And that's been changing over the years. Number one, search firms were looking more towards, men outside of the collegiate space to lead in the collegiate space. So that's a trend we were watching very closely. So we wanted to make sure we could position women in that way. We didn't really have access to those women. They weren't in our quote network. But also we've been seeing, and then, so this conversation's been going on with the organization for over 4 years before COVID. But in COVID, we saw a lot of women leaving the collegiate space and they wanted to stay connected. So it was this natural evolution. And then of course, the timing with the brand evolution last September, and then all the changes, the massive changes going on in college sports. I do think we are really well positioned to help and serve all women. And there's so many now that maybe have pivoted out, but they want to get back in. Or so now, we are the leadership organization for women working and leading in sports. Mm-hmm. And we're, we've been focused on, this being this career strategy support organization as well. So it's been more natural, and it's evolved more naturally, probably with that background than what most people know. But I also, from what we heard, most people got it too, because they're seeing the landscape. So, it's really not been that different than what we're doing. I do think that the name evolution has made it easier for many other organizations to get involved. And so what we've seen is an influx, a massive influx of people from all sectors wanting to get involved, wanting, to know how to hire women, wanting to know how women can get more involved to increase their quote network. And so it's been really positive.
That's great. I'm excited for the convention this fall to really be exposed to new women in sports that are representing different sectors, but within the sport. So I'm excited for that too.
And here's the thing. The journey is the same. It's the same. The journey for women as leaders in male-dominated spaces, that journey is the same. But we have noticed differences in the hiring trends and processes. We're just scratching the surface there. For how that happens in other sectors, specifically the pro space. And honestly, the path to leadership in the pro space is really, it's been traditionally through men's pro sports. So that's been interesting. But also definitely through revenue generation, being around money, being on the business side. And these are messages that have been getting incorporated more to women over the years. And you know this now more than me, Marcy, especially in your role. But so just getting those messages out there. That being said, the path to leadership is one thing we want to understand so that we can share. But ultimately, everyone doesn't want to lead. It doesn't need to lead. Again, we want women to be in whatever level they want to be at, to have influence and to have their voices heard and to make sure they have an experience that they feel great about. So we want to make sure we're the organization that serves women at all levels.
Yeah. Well, and we have the convention coming up October 13th through the 15th. So
good job. I'm glad it's on your calendar.
So excited to go to Baltimore. But, how do you envision either first-time rookie attendees or even veterans that are attending the convention this fall? What do you envision their experience to be? Because every convention I've been to is full of passion, energy. A lot of people walk away from the convention and say, I am renewed. I can go back to my campus or my organization and really have a fresh start and a fresh outlook. So what do you envision people's experience to be come October?
Well, that's it. You said it perfectly. You said it better than I could. I mean, especially as an attendee, we want women to walk away feeling energized. The energy of the event is important. I think there's a cost to that. We spend a lot of time. So that doesn't just happen. Like we do try to make sure there's a feeling, and honestly, women deserve it. Want them to come into a space that they feel like is their own. This is for them as leaders. It's best in class in every way. So that energy piece is really important. And there's concrete leadership lessons, and we hope they walk away with something else in their toolkit in addition to the confidence to feel that they can go and do it. So again, we talk about speaking that in. So we're going to keep speaking that into women broadly. And then you have people around you that had that spoken to them. So we want to continue that. So the other thing that we worked hard on over the years is we don't want it to be this 2.5 days where you come and feel that way and then it dies. We now have the infrastructure to keep that going through the Circle platform, through the Engage platform, through everything we're doing throughout the year, and through these other events and networks and the mentoring program, so that you can maintain and sustain that. That's really important. So that energy and feeling of confidence. And then also, obviously, the tools. What you're going to learn in the session. So we hope all of that continues. The app is going to be better than ever this year. Creating those connections while you're there is really, really important. And it's grown, and we've heard that feedback. We'll sell out again at probably 1,300 people. That's a lot of people. So we've tried to infuse more, quote, connection times. We added last year connection sessions where it's more engaging. We have the Lunch with Leaders and Legends, which is more kind of small, engaging. You can meet people more easily. So we've created specific events to do that. The app will do that. And, people are great about, hey, you message someone on the app and meet up, or you walk up to them at the table. We have a lot of leaders coming. And so we love that feeling is still there. It's not too big that people are going to isolate themselves, but we work really hard to make sure you can find a path to find people. It's a lot of people. And honestly, we've decided that's our max for now. We don't want to be this 2,000 person event for now. I don't know, that could change. I always say yet, but this feeling that you can connect with people is important. So we're going to make sure that we do our part and to create and maintain that.
Yeah. And I want you to hear this from me directly too, but this is also a message for other women in the industry. And, I fell in love with women leaders, years ago, but my first most impactful moment being involved in women leaders was when I attended the Institute for Administrative Advancement back, I think it was 2013 in Atlanta. And I remember so vividly where I was leading the conference. I was on the MARTA. I was going back to the Atlanta airport, and my AD and boss at the time, Bill McGillis, called me and said, "How'd it go?" And I just started crying, and I just said it was life-changing. And, for 3 days to have that much of emotion and pouring into yourself, but also creating a sisterhood. All of those women I still speak with, and we call each other sisters, and when you think of traditional professional organizations, I don't think you hear a lot of that, so it just goes to show how special women leaders in sports and your impact as the CEO and your team's, diligence and their investment in making these programmings so transformational for people, I think is just incredible. So kudos to you, and
Awesome.
Thank you so much for spending time with us today. You know, this is something I've been looking forward to for over a month now. And anytime I get to spend with you is, you know, I'll be waving my flag all weekend.
I love it. I love it. And ditto, Marcy, thank you. It's just been so fun to get to know you and watch you and your career and the impact you're having now, you know, kind of encouraging, coaching, and teaching women about the search process. Back in the day, we didn't have that. We didn't have women in search, you know, and so you can speak a whole nother level of potential into women, which is invaluable. So thank you for the great work you do at CSA. I really appreciate Drew and the team for everything you all are doing to help position and advance women. So keep it up.
And half of our firm are women. So that's amazing.
Yeah, let's go. Keep it up.
Yeah, so awesome. Well, thanks so much. And hello to everybody watching. And we will see you in October in Baltimore. And
can't wait.
Fun then.
All right. Thanks, Marcy.
Patti.